Hello and welcome to this special edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I'm coming to you from the ValleyCentral.com digital desk in Harlingen, Texas. And joining me today is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. How you doing, Sandra?
I'm wonderful. Rudy, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for being here today. Now, this is a special edition because we're not going to do the headlines or speak with anyone, because one of the things we always get is questions about who are all these different people wearing all these different uniform colors working along the border, and it's just so important. So if you're new to following immigration and border news, or just kind of want a refresher course on it, hopefully this show is going to get you guys up to speed. So Sandra, why don't we go ahead and start and just kind of tell us a little bit about just DHS as a whole.
Yeah, and absolutely. I'm so excited about this show because there are so many acronyms, ever-changing immigration information and news, and it can sometimes be overwhelming and hard to keep up. So if you're new to this, then just hop on board and join with us. So DHS, Department of Homeland Security, formed in 2002, right after 9/11. It was a combination of 22 different federal agencies. There are over 260,000 employees under the Department of Homeland Security. Kristi Noem is currently the Homeland Security Secretary. She's in the cabinet with President Trump. She oversees it. It's the third largest cabinet agency that Trump has. It oversees air, land, border, cybersecurity, FEMA, even Coast Guard, emergency response. But a couple of the agencies that we're going to focus on today: U.S. Customs and Border Protection and Border Patrol. Those are two really important ones for us.
So why don't we go ahead and get started with talking a little bit about CBP, Customs and Border Protection. A lot of people just hear BP at the end of that and think Border Patrol. I know we were talking about this, and I kept slipping out of my own mouth, and I've been reporting down here on the border for 5 years now. So tell us a little bit about what CBP does.
Okay, and CBP is actually, to confuse matters worse, the umbrella organization that is over Border Patrol. But CBP are the guys and gals in blue. They are the ones that are in charge of the checkpoints, any legal port of entry in the United States. They oversee when you fly into the United States. They have the right to look into your luggage, your bags, ask you any kind of questions. Just like here on the southwest border, anyone who comes through an international bridge from Mexico will go through a CBP agent. They have the ability to fingerprint, to take some biometrics of you. They'll usually take a quick picture of you. They store your information, and they are that questioning authority. Now, Border Patrol are the guys and gals in green, and they are the ones that patrol in between illegal port of entry. So what does that mean? Somebody comes across the Rio Grande and stops their boat or their raft, and it's not at an international bridge, and people disembark. All right, it's going to be Border Patrol that they are going to come upon. They're the ones that are going to ask them questions. They're the ones that are going to encounter them, so to speak, arrest them, detain them. Now, CBP operates the facilities where people are processed, where people stay. And so they are, and like I said, they're the overall umbrella organization that oversees the entire processing operation.
Now, one of the things that I think, kind of gives you an idea of where these folks are, if you see someone in those blue uniforms, I know military, police, when you see the blue uniforms, they almost look like a dress uniform. Those folks are working at the ports of entry. But when you look at what Border Patrol is wearing, they're wearing OD green fatigues, combat boots. That kind of, if you just see what they're wearing, kind of gives you an idea of what their specific mission is.
Well, and I've been in the field with them. I've been on ride-alongs. I've crawled through the grass with them. I had one guy throw me up from the back over a hill. He apologized and said, "Well, that's the way we help hoist people over who need a little help." And there's a reason they wear these combat-looking fatigues, because they are in the muck and the dirt and the brush and the sand. And here I'm with Public Information Officer Christina Smallwood right there on the Rio Grande, and she's showing me wristbands that cartels mark their human loads with as they come across. This is called an embarkment zone, and this is evidence that people are still coming across. So,
and you can just see right there how messy, how dirty, how treacherous really it is to get through there. So it kind of makes sense that those folks in green are dressed for the field, if you will.
It's cold, it's hot, you get ticks on you. Yeah, you have to pick ticks off of you.
Not to mention the mosquitoes that carry dengue or whatever it may be that they're bringing over.
Absolutely. It's a tough job. Right now, there are about 19,300 current Border Patrol agents. The fiscal year 2025 budget allows for up to 22,000 Border Patrol agents. They've had a bit of a hiring problem, but they are trying to up their recruitment. They're saying that they have had a recent uptick in interest. This President Trump's fiscal year 2026 bill he's proposed would add 3,000 agents. So it would fund it to a total of 25,000 agents if everyone was hired and the money was there, which is exactly the number of CBP officers that we have nationwide also.
One thing that I wanted to talk about also is DACA. It's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. These folks, both Border Patrol, CBP, they're, who kind of sees those folks come through, or how does that process work, or is that even related to what they're doing?
It is a citizenship request. It's a pathway toward citizenship. It's an asylum process. It is ultimately overseen by U.S. Immigration and Customs Services, USCIS, U.S. Customs Immigration Services. I still get it wrong. There have been about 500,000. Currently, there are about 500,000 DACA enrollees. There have been about 1 million since it started in 2014 in the Obama administration. You recall at the time it was also started with something called DAPA, Deferred Action for Parent Arrivals, but that policy was quickly quashed. It was deemed not legal. The DACA are basically the dreamers. These are the children who are brought over as youth, and the thinking is that they could not make this decision. Some adult brought them, choose to leave their homeland and cross the border illegally, and so these people are afforded the right to go to school, university tuition, and work permits. And now they do have to pay to renew their DACA applications. But right now, they're actually not taking any more DACA applications. The Trump administration has filed a lawsuit. They do want to end the program. The Fifth Circuit recently ruled that parts of it were unconstitutional, but we're expecting a showdown at the Supreme Court. Nationwide, there are an estimated 3.5 dreamers living out there in the United States.
And a lot of folks think, they're probably all sitting down here on the border too. And that's not the reality of the situation at all. They're spread throughout the entire United States. So we're going to be talking more about that in just a little bit, the asylum process as a whole. But today's edition, for those of you just joining us, we're talking about all the different things. We'll call it Border Report 101, if you will, today, to get those of you who already know or follow the news along the border, a nice little refresher. And for those of you that are new to following news along the border, up to date on all the things that we're talking about. A lot of acronyms. It's the government. So you got CBP, BP, ICE, all of it. We're going to break all that down, including the asylum process, when we come back from the break. You're watching Border Report Live. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Border Report Live from the ValleyCentral.com digital desk in Harlingen, Texas, along the banks of the Rio Grande. My name is Rudy Mideles. I'm your host for the program, and joining me today is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. Hey, Sandra.
Hi, Rudy.
So before the break, we were talking a little bit about DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and that is part of the much larger and much more complicated total asylum process. So can you kind of I know we only have a few minutes, but can you explain some of the asylum process?
Right. We could probably do a show on every policy. Basically, right now, there are no asylum processes for everyone. There are what's always called very vulnerable populations. So there are always exceptions. We can never say they are not accepting anyone. There are some people that can cross, but right now, there used to be something called the CBP One app during the Biden administration, and people would make an appointment. They would wait sometimes 9 months to 15 months south of the border for this opportunity to come and meet with an asylum officer at one of the 9 ports of entry that were chosen along the southern border, a couple here in the Rio Grande Valley, some of the bridges, and they would make their cases. They bring their documents in triplicate. And keep in mind, when you apply for asylum in the United States, it's not for an economic reason. You can't say, I'm just coming to work. You have to say, I am fleeing a dangerous situation. I have paperwork that shows the police came to my house, that gangs attacked my child, that, we were threatened, we were kidnapped. I mean, and so a lot of this takes a lot of information in another language that these people don't necessarily, is not their primary language.
Yeah,
but they have to make this case as they come across the border.
What's interesting about what you just said, a lot of these folks are fleeing some kind of violence. I've had the opportunity to speak and share the story of folks that, came from those countries in South America, made the journey to flee violence. Folks, having their children held as ransom for, the money that the income that their small business took in for the week. And but the journey to get from Honduras or any of those countries up is just as treacherous, if not almost more dangerous sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it can, on average, take about 15 months. Sometimes there are some Haitians who actually lived in Brazil for a number of years as they were migrating north, who have been a big population that have come across the border in the past couple of years. The big law that prevents you from, so right now, what is in effect is called Title 8. This is part of the U.S. Immigration and Nationality Act, and what it means is you cannot cross the border in between legal ports of entry without proper documents, and you can't come and just apply for asylum. That is what the Trump administration is trying to limit the number of people who are here. So we have the MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocols policy means they need to wait south of the border. Like I said, there are very vulnerable people that will get some sort of hearing, some sort of ability to talk to officers and plead their case. There are still some of them, but it's very far and few between. An example, in April, there were about 8,300 encounters of people who crossed the border by Border Patrol on the southwest land border. In April of 2024, there was 128,000 encounters. So down 120,000. So a tremendous drop.
Tell us about, once folks get into the country and let's say they're processed, tell us a little bit about the processing centers and what those encompass.
Yeah, so we mentioned earlier CBP, they are the ones that will take the information and people enter these facilities. They're nicknamed the hielera or ice box. They tend to be kept extremely cold. People are given thermal blankets. People are separated and grouped by age and like family units. Now, I'm kind of talking in the past because we are not seeing numbers like this. Here we see some families who are talking to officers. Here we see separate pens where they are segregated. Teenage boys, for instance, are not with young girls. This looks like, a pair of 12-year-old boys. They're separate. Yes, they sleep on the floor. They have blankets. They're given sandwiches. They are given a little exercise time. The children have some schooling. The very, very small children have their needs met for them, and actually brings kind of a good point that when children come in, some of them don't have parents with them, and they're called unaccompanied minors. they are actually not under the Department of Homeland Security. They become under the Health and Human Services Department, and under a court ruling called the Flores Settlement, children are who don't come with an adult are supposed to be taken care of within 72 hours. They're not supposed to be in these facilities for longer than 3 days. When the big surge began here in 2014, we were seeing children kept in the hieleras for like 20, 30 days. And so there were a lot of court cases that went, and really the time frame got drastically reduced. And another thing about when these children do come in, though, because they're under HHS, we as journalists do not have a right to ask about them. They're not issued what's called an A number, an alien identification number, which is what everyone is given when they come in and apply for asylum. Their A numbers are not public information. We have no idea where they go, who's taking care of them, because of their minor status.
Do we have any idea about how many children are out there that maybe, haven't been reunited with a family, or do we have those numbers?
Well, actually, about 1,300. Remember, family separation started 2018, and then there was this big reunification process that began, and they did reunify many families, but there are still an estimated 1,300 children separated at the border from 2017 to 2021 who still have not been reunited with their children, with their parents. Now, Secretary Kristi Noem recently reported that a couple hundred have been reunited under the Trump administration, and they are really working towards that. But what's interesting is the recent ICE raids that have happened, and this is another acronym, Immigration Customs Enforcement, and this is mostly in the interior, right? A lot of people are saying this is the next generation. This is a new form of family separation, because some of these children who might have been born in the United States and are U.S. citizens, and maybe they're not being deported back, but their parents now are being deported back. And so what we're starting to see, and what migrant advocates are saying, is a new family separation 2.0 happening. We'll see.
All right. Well, if you're just joining us, we're doing kind of a refresher course for those of you that follow the news that's happening along the southern border. And for those of you that are new to Border Report, borderreport.com, just kind of a little Border 101 course for you to kind of tell you the different about the different agencies. In this last segment, we were discussing the different types of different rules, a couple different rules really of many about the asylum process. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the one part of the asylum process, which is going through an immigration court. And we're actually going to hear from a former immigration judge out of Chicago on what she saw while working in those immigration courts. My name is Rudy Mireles. That's Sandra Sanchez. Stay with us. You're watching Border Report Live. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, host of the South Texas edition from the ValleyCentral.com digital desk in Deep South Texas. And joining me today is Border Report South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. Hey, Sandra.
Hi, Rudy.
So before the break, we were talking a little bit about some of the asylum process. It's so convoluted. I'm sure it's a big book about that big with
bigger.
Probably bigger with small type. But one of the parts of the process is seeing an immigration judge. And we actually have a little bit of a soundbite from a former immigration judge out of Chicago who talks about what she saw during her time as a judge. Let's take a listen.
And this is
go ahead.
And she oversaw children. We were just talking about children.
Yes.
So she oversaw children who came to the United States unaccompanied.
All right, let's take a listen.
So as an immigration judge in Chicago, I've presided over the cases of thousands of unaccompanied children over the course of my career. I was the presiding judge over the detained and non-detained juvenile dockets, where I saw these children appear while they were in OR custody, separated from their families, far from home, some as young as infants. They were required to plead to complex immigration charges, present their claims for asylum and other forms of humanitarian protection, or defend via other means against the imminent risk of deportation to countries where they had been or would most certainly be in harm's way. These children continued to appear before me when they were released locally within the jurisdiction of the Chicago Immigration Court as well. In each case, I witnessed firsthand the urgent need for legal representation for these children, the vast majority of whom do not speak English, who often do not speak Spanish either. They generally arrive here by themselves with no support and no means to retain a private attorney after having survived unspeakable traumas both in their countries of origin and on their way here.
Wow.
So, there you have it.
So she is a former U.S. immigration judge, which is under the Executive Office of Immigration Review, which is part of the Department of Justice, but it's its own court system. It is not a criminal court. It is not a civil court. It is federal immigration court. There are about 68 EOIR judges nationwide, 68 courts, and there are about 700 federal immigration judges. Here in the Valley, we have about 3 different court systems here. In the fiscal year 2025 budget, they funded to add 375 more judges, but they've really had, once again, trouble adding, because it's not just hiring the judge, it's hiring the bailiff, the clerk, the translator. It's an entire staff, and then it's finding the facility for them. Since 2015, Congressman Henry Cuellar, he's based home is Laredo, Texas, here on the South Texas border. He represents this region, Democrat, former majority leader for the House Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee. Still, he is the senior member of that committee. He has added in the appropriations budget every year, like for 100 more, 50 more, 200 more, but still they just can't seem to really get the numbers up to what they need it to be. And as such, the judges each have tremendous caseloads. Right now, there is a backlog of 3.5 million immigration cases, and it can take anywhere from 2 to 6 years, depending who you talk to, on having these cases resolved. Now, believe it or not, that's actually down. In April, it was 3.7 million in fiscal year in April of 2024. So that's actually down slightly. Top states are Florida, Texas, and California.
Now, when you hear that number, that's about a 200,000 person drop, 3.7 to 3.5 million, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you really put it into context, it's over 200,000 lives that have been affected, whether for good or bad, depending on what the outcome of their visit to an immigration judge was. But it's a lot to try to work through.
It is, and like I mentioned, they, again, have to present all of their information in English, often required like 3 copies. And one thing that the judge mentioned is that these children needing representation. Okay, one thing I want to say is that the adults who come through the system are not given a prosecutor. They're not given a defense lawyer. This is not part of what the United States does. They have the right to hire an immigration lawyer on their own dime, but it is not given to them. Once again, so that is not paid for. But there were programs that the federal government subsidized to help for free pro bono legal representation for unaccompanied children. Recently, the Trump administration has cut off some of that funding. Again, they say it's to discourage people from coming north. If they think that they will have an easy way to come through the court system, then they don't want to encourage that. Migrant advocacy groups are saying, we need to represent these children. As that judge just said, some of them are are in diapers as they come before the courts.
Yeah, pretty hard for a child that young. I'm just picturing my own kid. You know, he's almost 11 months old, having to go through that. What does a child, even at 8 years old, know when they're going before a judge for the first time? So it's very interesting. And you know, these immigration judges, you know, they're trying to hire more. Are there any kind of qualifications that you know of? I mean, do they have to be, you know, attorneys or lawyers, or can anyone just apply for those jobs?
Actually, I sat on a committee that was looking to hire a magistrate, and we actually had some immigration judges who were were applying for the position because they wanted to get out of the immigration court system. And I think it's because it is so overburdened, and they have such a pressure to move these cases through. And you know, of course, they need a legal background. Of course, they will be screened and vetted. But, you know, there's more to just an immigration case. You may have somebody who comes from a country and speaks a dialect like Quechua, right? And they need to get a translator for that person. It's not just Spanish or Creole, which has become a big translation need lately.
Oh, wow.
We have Chinese, Russians, we have people from Uzbekistan. And sometimes the court case is scheduled for 11 a.m. and there's no translator available for that language. So, you know, it throws the whole system off. I have sat in court before, and, you know, it depends what judge you get, but oftentimes the judge will say, no, you know, we're not going to go forward if the person can't understand. A lot of these proceedings are also done via video from what used to be a tent facility at the ports of entry, where they would have, I would see like 100 people, and they would each have their moment before the judge on video. They'd come up to a table, and that would be their first asylum hearing. And if they passed that, things got a little bit more personable down the road.
Well, it sounds like you just said judges were leaving to apply for different positions and different agencies. And it sounds like recruitment as a whole is tough for not just, you know, immigration judges, but Border Patrol agents, CBP officers. They want to boost those numbers, but it's a tough job, and it's tough to get folks to want to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, the numbers, like we were talking about earlier, the number of encounters fluctuate. And the people that they meet, the situations that they have, the other organizations they work with here in Texas. The Border Patrol also work with the Texas National Guard, and it's a whole nother process called Operation Lone Star, which is state funded, but they're here on the border. They at first were the eyes and ears for Border Patrol. Now they have arresting and authority along with state troopers. So, you know, but there are some days that now they're just kind of watching one position. There's not a lot to see. You know, it is a tough, it's a tough, hard terrain. It's a tough, hard job.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandra, for joining us today and giving the folks at home a little Border Report 101, if you will.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. That does it for this special edition of Border Report Live. Make sure to follow Sandra, myself on social media, and get over to borderreport.com to get more. Have a good day.